Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Caryn Johnson, the Earth Channel, back with another message from Gaia. Today I have a more abstract poem for you, and Gaia also wanted me to share more about human design and a series that she wants me to start. But first, the poem. Born upon a breath and into a body, the beacon begins boldly, fueled by a fire, taking in a feast. Life's flickering flames flash about, synthesizing sound after sound, sparking a sure symphony. New connections come, cadence on the wind, mounting into a crescendo. Then with a whisper, the power is released, spreading a spectral horizon. Beyond words, beyond comprehension, Technicolor love blooms in waves. So the series that Gaia wants me to start is based on human design, which is a form of astrology with, if you've seen any of my other videos, I've usually posted them with some kind of graphic showing the zodiac with the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching overlaid upon those. And this system was basically channeled, I would say, by a guy named Ra Uruhu back in the 80s, I believe, early 80s. He is no longer with us in that physical form, and he preached against, teachers and gurus, and yet he became one himself in a very big way. He charged a lot of money for his classes, and his legacy lives on. And I am certainly grateful for him having brought that knowledge more into our consciousness. And yet I have my own messages from Gaia that I have been asked to share and moved to share. And those are related to that same realm of knowledge with the I Ching and the hexagrams. The hexagrams and the I Ching Book of Changes have been credited to Lao Tzu, who came way before Ra. So the way the hexagrams are overlaid on the zodiac has to do with the lower trigram, the first 3 lines, because we count from the bottom. And that's sort of how the pattern goes, and if you study it enough, you can sort of see how they follow the seasons in a way, at least maybe in the northern hemisphere. And each of those lines is either solid or broken, they call it. Solid would be a yang line, and broken would be a yin line. And so it's basically, the 64 hexagrams are basically the number of permutations that are possible in combining the broken yin and solid yang lines in different combinations of 6. And this has a direct connection, parallel, you could say, with the codons and amino acids, basically, the codons that create the different amino acids, which are basically the building blocks of life. So in that way also you can sort of see the parallel with nature, and you might begin to see why Gaia is interested in using this modality to get certain messages across. What I love most about human design, and I believe I love it so much because I love Gaia so much, is that it really shows you in the most specific way I've found the beauty of the diversity of life. And I know that when we grow up in certain ways, in certain areas, with certain paradigms given to us often by our parents, but also teachers and so on and so forth, we can often become very comfortable or conditioned with that way of seeing things, that way of living, that way of being. And some of us have grown up in ways that did not allow for a lot of diversity. I personally grew up in a very small town, and there was not a lot of diversity there. There was some, but I still had a lot to learn once I left about the different ways that people can be. And I always felt very different when I lived there and grew up there. So I had a bit of an awakening, and I've had several awakenings, I guess you could say. That doesn't mean that I'm at the end of my path by any means, but different awakenings to the different ways that people can be and the beauty of those differences. Of course, they didn't always seem beautiful to me. There were times I had challenges and I struggled to accept different things and different ways of being. But this one really captures it well. And what makes it even better, I believe, in terms of that aspect of it, accepting those differences, is when you include Richard Rudd's work on the gene keys. He was a student of Ra Uru Hu's, and he sort of took off on a tangent where he talks about the shadow, the gift, and the highest expression, which he calls the siddhi, for each of those hexagrams. So I'm not going to duplicate that work by any means. I may refer to it now and then, and I did get permission from him, from the Gene Keys organization, in order to make certain references. And by all means, go check out his work. It's awesome and really has been helpful to me too. But the different thing that Gaia wants me to do is to go back a little bit more to human design and catch some of those things that Ra didn't necessarily catch, and neither did Richard Rudd. And that has to do with the different centers, the 9 centers. Richard Rudd did a little bit of work with another guy out of Germany, I believe. I want to say his name was Werner. I'm blanking on his last name. He did some different things with human design, or different, showing the centers as opposed to just focusing on each hexagram or gene key. But I felt like it was still missing something. So one of the things I've recognized about narcissistic traits throughout my life, and maybe more so in recent years, is that when someone is exhibiting narcissistic traits, and I believe all of us can fall into these traps now and then when we are stressed out or tired, we just want to go with what's comfortable, and we really don't want to deal with what is different. We don't really maybe even feel like accepting what is different. And it's not to say that we have to live in any certain way dictated by anyone else, but we do need to live and let live, and accept that other people's way of living and being is not wrong, for them at least. They have their own path. They have their own things that they need to figure out, experience, so on and so forth. And only when we expand our being, our consciousness, we soften, we open our hearts, can we live and let live, allow others to be who and what they need to be, and allow ourselves to be in who and what we need to be, without worrying about what other people think or judgments about us. And so there are different ways that we may or may not find it easy to do this based on our human design charts. So if you'd like to prepare, I'm not going to get into detail today. This is really going to be a series that starts next week, and I will be posting those different segments to that series each week. So please do subscribe, support me either on YouTube or on Facebook or both, and be sure to catch those as they come out. The other thing Gaia wanted me to share is that the way that this connects with, it might be hard to make that connection right away, between narcissism and diversity. The diversity, I mean, a lot of you are nature lovers like I am, and you recognize the value of diversity of nature, of plants, of animals, and how that diversity helps all the different ecosystems out there, what value there can be, what cures to diseases we may not have even discovered yet, And if we don't help preserve that diversity, we may lose out on some of those that we haven't discovered. But that connects to narcissistic traits versus not being narcissistic, because of those differences and those different ways of being. We need to really be the fullest version of the unique beings that we are. And it's not to say that any one of us is above or below another. We're just different. And just like the different instruments in a symphony, we all have our parts to play, our pieces to play, our parts to contribute. And only by really embracing the fullness of our differences can we really bring in that beautiful harmony that can happen in a symphony, as opposed to everybody competing for solos or trying to steal each other's solos. So I hope that makes sense. The hexagrams of the I Ching are pretty amazing, and I might try to tie some of that in as we're talking about the centers, because obviously each of those centers, I'll of course post a chart or two for you to look at as I'm speaking here. But each center has those little numbers in it, and as you look around the circle of the zodiac, and you might have to blow them up, just to be able to see them, because they're kind of small depending on which charts I post. You'll see that the numbers correlate to numbers around that circle and those hexagrams with the 6 either broken or solid lines. So each center has its own gates or hexagrams. Those are the same thing basically for the purposes of human design. And they stay in that center. They don't move around as far as those numbers go. So there are certain themes that we may explore as far as those different gates being in those centers. So hopefully that makes sense. If you want to run your chart in preparation for this so that you can begin to explore what this means for you, you can go to many free sites. You can do an internet search human design free chart, and you'll find lots of places. The one I typically refer people to is called humandesignamerica.com. I think it's /chart, and you'll have to enter your birth information. If you don't know your birth time, I would recommend putting in noon, or you can sort of play around with it. You can message me and I can give you a little guidance. But at least that's somewhere to start, and it doesn't change a lot with everybody. Some people it actually does change quite a bit based on the time, but a lot of times you can figure out, you can get a pretty good idea of what your chart is based on the time, or on an approximate time, or by using noon. So go run your chart, and Human Design America, that one gives you free sample readings and really inexpensive reports if you want to go ahead and take one step further. I'm not currently selling any readings at this time. If anyone wanted a reading with me, I'm asking for your positive feedback in exchange so that I can put that on my website eventually. And it's sort of just like an energy exchange at this point. Eventually I will begin to charge money for those. And by the way, I am not affiliated with humandesignamerica.com at all. I'm not getting any money for you running your chart there or buying reports. That's somebody completely separate from me. So thank you so much for joining me. Please remember to like, subscribe, love if you're watching this from Facebook or reading it. And thank you so much for joining and listening today. Namaste, beloveds.